Hello everyone and welcome back to Doctor Who's Crown Jewels. We're in the Capaldi era. And I think this may be an improvement in terms of actual quality of production. Series 7 had a lot of issues. But I personally feel like Series 8 didn't really have those issues. If you have a problem with Series 8, it's not that it feels underbaked. It's not that every episode had 45 minutes to do a lot. Not only its story, but progress the overall story arc. And not only that, introduce a new character dynamic. I mean, they are doing that, but they're spending more time developing that dynamic instead of making everything self-contained while also trying to progress dynamic, but in a way that doesn't sort of break with the arc. It very much feels like this time they were told what to do in terms of the characterization and then build the plot around it, which I feel like is a better approach. It's still pretty much every episode is 45 minutes and it's a story per episode, but Deep Breath was given a lot more time to flesh itself out to really make sure that this dynamic starts off in a way that they are set to continue with. And also, it is meticulously planned out what the character dynamics are going to be like. Your opinion on this season, however, is how much you actually like both the structure of the dynamic and also how much you are receptive to the kind of dynamic that it is. Structurally, there is a sort of love triangle going on. It's not your traditional love triangle. It's a different kind of love. It's more so Clara's love for travelling with the Doctor and also her love for the Doctor, as well as her love for normality and life with Danny. It's not that each has its own problems. I just feel like it is very much weighted on the Doctor and Clara, and I think that is just a byproduct of it being those are the two main characters. Danny is a side character. But then again, the whole point of Danny is he doesn't want to be on adventures. Like, it's a natural byproduct of that. I'm not against that. And in theory, I think a toxic relationship between a Doctor and companion is interesting. It's never really been done in this way. At the same time, I've not historically been a fan of it, mainly because I feel like Clara's attitude towards the Doctor I have issue with. I don't know, I feel like we do get a bit too much sympathy for her, which then bleeds into the things we're meant to not like. However, I'm not saying we shouldn't be sympathetic towards it. It's a very complicated thing to analyse, because it's a very complicated sort of relationship with really complex feelings. As a result, it has its highs and lows, and my personal enjoyment honestly depends on those highs and lows. My least favourite episode of the season, and I do think it's very important for me to bring this up, is Kill the Moon. Because it has a whole host of issues. I will admit the best moment of the story is the Dr. Clara stuff, because quite honestly, it's very much their relationship needed something like that for the entire thing to even remotely work. But at the same time, I feel like the actual actions that Clara did were not morally reprehensible. And it's understandable given how the ending of the following story, sometimes the only decisions you have are bad ones. Yeah, sure. But when faced with the unknown and choosing to pick something which is likely going to cause more misery than the other, I don't sympathise with that. And we're not meant to sympathise with the Doctor, and I agree. He did something bad. He forced Clara into a position where she had to be like the Doctor. The Crown Jewels are the Jamie Matheson ones, I'm just going to say this right now. But it's because these two episodes do something with the material in the season that, honestly, I do think Kill the Moon sets up both, but not in a way that it was bad so they could be good. No. I'm speaking about just objective what the story of Kill the Moon is doing. What Kill the Moon does in establishing what the Doctor does, then we understand the Doctor better in Mommy on the Orient Express, and as a result, Clara leans into it in Flatline. And I think the exploration of those are the peak of the season. And having a sort of wobbly turning point It's something that viewers could be frustrated with for if exposed to for too long. But if you're into dynamics like that, I can see you enjoying this season. I've kind of always been a bit more favourable to their dynamic in the stories that I like. As a result, I didn't really think of anything to put as an honourable mention. Here's the thing. I think Mummy on the Orient Express is a very unique kind of story. It's a murder mystery where we see the murderer and the murder happening, but we need to find out what the murderer's motives are and what it is and how to stop it. It's very unique, and how it explores the Dr. Clara dynamic, I think, is interesting. After Kill the Moon, Clara was like, okay, one more travel and I'm done. It's an addiction. She is addicted, but she's prepared to leave. However, the Doctor proving he's capable of doing anything remotely the right thing, as well as explaining the motivations behind why he does the not so great things he does, it's a perfect introduction to the 12th Doctor as a character, or at least who he is in Series 8. And in reality, the whole thing of am I a good man, I feel like what this season was trying to do could have been executed better in terms of the Doctor's characterization. But I do feel like the good man stuff could have been phrased a lot better if it was the intent, which I think it kind of is evident that it was, that it's more so the Doctor trying to figure out how to be the Doctor again, because he's the Doctor, but he's regenerated into a form much suiting to someone who doesn't care. And it's an interesting dynamic, internal dynamic to watch. And honestly, that's why I enjoy the 12th Doctor in Series 8. I've got to admit, I do enjoy the 12th Doctor. I've never said I didn't. I've just not really liked the context he's existed in his first two seasons. Mummy on the Orient Express is also just visually interesting, and also the existence of Frank Skinner as Perkins is honestly great. The Doctor needed to be separated from Clara so that Clara can marinate on her feelings, which I do think was very important. That needed to happen. But also, the Doctor needed something to do and someone to talk to, so why not get Frank Skinner? That's perfect. I do definitely think the structure of the story very much works, and the timer works, and I think everyone's explained why this story's really good. And honestly, everything it does is my kind of vibe, and it does it super well. I only have one point of issue, and that is the climax is rushed. It's a very rushed climax. Also, the themes of soldiers is kind of it's a bit of a strong motif I don't think is good. I don't think it's a good thing in this season. However, it is interwoven pretty well in this story, and the grander context of the season doesn't really intrude. Which I'm only bringing up because it is part of the climax, but I just feel like the Doctor's aversion to soldiers is a bit weird, considering, yes, I know the trauma of the Time War happened, but he was still fine with units, because that was weirdly the exception, but that's understandable. But his own personal aversion to soldiers because he was one and he hated who he was then, wasn't the Day of the Doctor entirely about overcoming. The whole acceptance of one's own past is a slightly different theme that the Day of the Doctor does, which feels completely ignored in Series 8, which I don't think is good. But I think it's fine in Mummy on the Orient Express. That whole the Doctor not liking soldiers isn't really a thing in this climax. But what is a thing in this climax, and I'm not against the Doctor solving it in a minute. The Doctor would have that time. So it makes sense, it's consistent, and I think it's pulled off pretty well. But I really do enjoy everything else in this story. Literally, that is just one thing that I can really go, okay, no, this doesn't work. But everything else works completely as intended. Now, Flatline, I think everything it does is done perfectly. I don't think there is a single problem with Flatline. I can't think of any anyways. The two-dimensional creatures, which the Doctor names as the Boneless at the end for some reason. Not everything has to have a name, but sure. To Clara trying to be the Doctor because she realises why the Doctor does what he does, and now she's like, well, I could do that. To everything to do with Rigsy being a street artist and all of that motif going in, to the powers that the Boneless have, to the side cast just honestly being well characterised. Honestly, I think that even the pacing, I don't think is an issue. I don't think there is a single issue in the story. I can't think of any. You might think of some, but I can't. I think it was perfect. I keep asking myself, why do I feel more drawn to Mummy on the Orient Express and feel like I want to say it's better when objectively I think Flatline is? Obviously, I like Flatline, I like its conceit, I like everything, but the things I like about Mummy on the Orient Express I like more, and it's not because I think it does it better, it's just a subjective, I think this vibes with my tastes more. But it has an issue, so it's a case of, I don't think opinions can be objective. Even criticism, I think, is pretty subjective, even though it relies on objective reality. You cannot say something is objectively bad because XYZ, because that isn't necessarily bad, it's just not to your taste, perhaps. Unless if I'm proven wrong on this, if I missed something, fair enough, point that out. However, despite that, I personally would rather watch Mummy on the Orient Express again as to Flatline. And Flatline doesn't deter me with that one character who's just an arsehole. It doesn't. But it doesn't deter me at all, but I am just more drawn to Mummy on the Orient Express, and I don't know why. I think the discussion this time shouldn't really be about, do you agree with me? Because you probably do, everyone loves these two. Whatever the case, you can discuss what you feel about Series 8, and I think what you feel about certain stories may well dictate, but then again, that's just how opinions work anyway. But join me next time as the Clara years come to an end with Series 9. Bye!